Before we begin, this video was the choice of Red Pyro, who won my drawing that I had back when I got 100 subscribers. Sukloigar everyone, this is Darth Judicar, and I'm coming at you with my latest Versus series video. I will also be announcing a new contest at the end of this video, and I hope you look forward to that. Honestly, I probably should have announced it by now. And once I get back from a vacation I'm going on, I will be announcing who wins that particular contest. So keep an eye out for that, and I will now present to you Obi-Wan Kenobi versus Depa Billaba. Obi-Wan Kenobi was born in 57 BBY on the planet Stujon. The eldest son of a moderately wealthy family, Kenobi's talent in the Force was recognized at an early age, and he was taken to Coruscant in order to undergo Jedi training. During his early training in the Jedi Temple, he trained under some of the greatest masters of his era, including Yoda and Sindralic. At the age of 12, Kenobi attracted the attention of the then Jedi Knight Qui-Gon Jinn, and after the two worked together on a mission on Bandomir, Jinn took Kenobi on as his Padawan. During his time as Jinn's Padawan, Kenobi took part in several altercations with Jinn's former Padawan, Xanatos, who had fallen to the dark side. Kenobi was also involved in the Stark hyperspace war along with Qui-Gon Jinn, where he became close friends with his fellow Padawan, Quinlan Vos. During a year stay on Mandalore, Kenobi became close to Duchess Satine, the leader of the New Mandalorians, during the Mandalorian Great Clan Wars. Kenobi fell in love with Satine, but ultimately chose to stay with the Jedi. In 32 BBY, Kenobi and Jinn were sent to the Naboo in order to help with negotiations to end the Trade Federation blockade that was going on at the time. However, negotiations never took place, and the two Jedi were forced to flee the planet, with Queen Amidala eventually reaching the planet Tatooine for supplies and repairs. It was during his time on Tatooine that he first met the young, recently freed Anakin Skywalker. He spent some time consulting with the Jedi Council on Coruscant before returning to Naboo to push back the Trade Federation that had taken over most of the planet. It was during the Battle of Naboo and the retaking of Theed Palace that Qui-Gon Jinn was killed by an unknown assassin, later revealed to be the Sith Lord Darth Maul. Kenobi, enraged by the death of his master, leaped out of the reactor pit and cut the Sith Lord in half, believing the man to be dead. Afterwards, Kenobi was promoted to the rank of Jedi Knight, and Anakin Skywalker was made his Padawan. In the decade leading up to the Clone Wars, Kenobi and Anakin took part in many missions, including the investigation of Cad Chun, a mission to Ragoon 6, and a mission to the living planet of Zonoma Sakat, searching for the missing Jedi Knight Vergere. In 22 BBY, Kenobi traveled to the planet Kamino while following up on a lead from the bounty hunter Zam Wysel. It was here that he discovered the existence of the clone army that had been commissioned 10 years prior, supposedly by the Jedi Master Sifo Dyas. He found the clone template Jango Fett and tracked him to the planet Geonosis, where he was captured by Count Dooku. Anakin and Padme Amidala attempted to rescue him from the clutches of the Count, however they too were captured by the Geonosians. The three of them were, however, rescued by a group of Jedi led by Mace Windu, followed by the arrival of the clone army led by Yoda, marking the beginning of the first battle of Geonosis, which started the Clone Wars. Kenobi was made a general in the Grand Army of the Republic and led the Republic to many major victories, including the battles of Araxes Prime, the First Battle of Kamino, Omadun, and Queta. Kenobi was also involved in negotiations with Jabba the Hutt during the time that the Separatists had kidnapped the Crime Lord's son. Kenobi's efforts to try and talk things out before resorting to violence earned him the nickname of the Negotiator among the Separatist leaders. During the Battle of Coruscant at the end of the Clone Wars, Anakin and Kenobi were involved in the attack on the Invisible Hand in order to rescue Chancellor Palpatine, who had been captured. However, Kenobi was knocked out during the ensuing fight with Count Dooku. On the planet Utapau, Kenobi fought against General Grievous, disarming the rogue cyborg and finally killing him once and for all. However, it was not long after this that Order 66 was enacted, nearly sending Kenobi to his death in one of Utapau's many sinkholes. However, he escaped and went to Coruscant's Jedi Temple in order to learn the truth about what had happened. What he found shocked him. His apprentice Anakin Skywalker had fallen to the dark side and risen again as Darth Vader. He tracked Vader to the planet Mustafar, and the two fought each other in a duel to the death across the volcanic landscape. Kenobi was victorious in this fight, however, and was forced to leave Anakin to die after having cut off his limbs and leaving him burning on the side of a lava river. After Luke and Leia were born, Kenobi took Luke to Tatooine to live with his aunt and uncle, and then went into exile, taking on the name Old Ben Kenobi. 19 years later, he would train Luke Skywalker in the ways of the Jedi, leading up to his death at the hands of Darth Vader on the first Death Star. Kenobi is mostly remembered as being one of the greatest generals in the Clone Wars, as well as having trained both Anakin and Luke Skywalker in the ways of the Force. Depa Billaba was born on the planet Chalcata, but left when she was 6 months old with her family to find a new home. During this time, however, the ship they were on was attacked by pirates and her parents were killed. However, Depa and her sister were rescued by the Jedi Master Mace Windu. Depa was raised in the Jedi Temple with her sister, and when she was old enough, she was apprenticed to Mace Windu, who trained her in his own designed form of lightsaber combat known as Vapad. At some point, she was promoted to Jedi Knight by the Council, but the circumstances around this is not known. Depa studied as a consular, choosing instead of a lightsaber to use words to prevent a battle, even though she was still incredibly well trained in lightsaber dueling. Depa became one of the youngest masters ever appointed to the Jedi Council in 33 BBY. Not long afterwards, she was assigned to investigate an assassination attempt on Chancellor Valorum, along with Yaddle, Qui-Gon Jinn, Vergere, and Obi-Wan Kenobi. When Mace Windu went missing on Nar Shaddaa while investigating a smuggler ring, Depa traveled there and saved him from a group of underworld thugs, eventually allowing him to escape. While Depa did not take part in the Battle of Geonosis, her sister Sar Labuda did, and she was killed during the battle. While Depa was reluctant about the formation of the Grand Army of the Republic, she was made a general in that army and went on to fight in the Clone. However, early in the Clone Wars, Depa took a mission to the planet Harun Kal to push back the Separatist forces there. She enlisted the help of the Korunai militia in order to topple any of the Separatist-friendly regimes. However, over the course of this mission, she started to fall far closer to the dark side because of the atrocities she either committed or was faced with. Concerned about her, Mace Windu traveled to Harun Kal in order to confront her about her actions. When Windu arrived, he initially tried to place her under arrest for war crimes and the two dueled, finally ending when Depa succumbed to her injuries and fell into a coma. Her death is unknown, but she likely died when the 501st attacked the Jedi Temple in Order 66. All in all, while Depa Billaba did serve on the Jedi Council, there is very little that she actually contributed to the war other than the effort on the planet of Heroin Call. Obi-Wan Kenobi was a human male that was in his 30s at the time of the Clone Wars. Because he chose Sarisu with a small focus in Ataru, Kenobi did actually require a strong physical presence and endurance. His strength was considerable enough that he was able to counter effectively the more aggressive attacks of Anakin Skywalker during the battle on Mustafar. He also had considerable speed, but this was not to the same degree as other individuals such as Mace Windu or Darth Sidious. However, his physical endurance did have its limits, as he was taken down by Count Dooku during most of their encounters by either his lightsaber or force abilities. However, Kenobi's skill was still considerable and should not be discounted in any fight. All in all, Obi-Wan Kenobi's physical abilities were considerable throughout his life and should not be discounted as such. Depa Billaba was a Cheklotan female who was in her 30s at the time of her fall to the dark side. Cheklotans are basically physically similar to humans, so there is very little difference in terms of her versus any real human. While Depa focuses more on her force abilities than lightsaber dueling, her focus on Vapad does require physical strength as well as mental strength. Beyond what was standard for Vapad users, there was very little that Depa had to offer in terms of physical abilities. There is actually very little contest in this category. While they both are basically the same species, the fact is that there is a big gap between the two of them. Depa Billaba does have skill in terms of physical abilities, but she is much more geared towards negotiation and diplomatic methods. By contrast, Obi-Wan Kenobi is still a diplomat, but he is also incredibly physically strong as a result of his training and his choice of lightsaber style. As such, I give Obi-Wan Kenobi the edge in terms of physical ability. Obi-Wan Kenobi was a notable practitioner of Form 3 Sarisu and was regarded as being the greatest master of Sarisu in history by many of the other Jedi of his era. The third form of lightsaber combat, Sarisu, was designed to counter the more dueling-centric Form 2 Makashi, a combat form geared specifically for defense, blocking both lightsabers and blaster bolts to great effect. Kenobi used Sarisu to not only block lightsaber strikes but to counter an opponent's strikes quickly. This would give him a considerable edge, especially when an opponent would expect a more defensive assault from their opponent. In addition to blaster deflection, Kenobi could also intercept Force lightning with his lightsaber effectively if he had enough time, as shown in his fight with Count Dooku on the planet Geonosis. Where his lightsaber skills in Surisu were most strong was when Count was fighting an opponent with a highly aggressive lightsaber form such as Juyo or Vaapad. While Kenobi was a mostly defensive lightsaber duelist, his chosen style was still one that he mastered and could bring quite effectively to the battlefield. Depa Billaba was one of the few Jedi that were allowed to use the Form 7 variant that Mace Windu had created, known as Vaapad. One of the most difficult lightsaber forms for a Jedi to master, Vaapad requires the user to draw on their own inner darkness to use in combat. As a result, it tends to be an incredibly aggressive form of combat that could also be used to draw on the darkness of the opponent. However, this is not required, and most practitioners use their own inner darkness to create a powerful offensive attack and a ring around themselves of pure force energy. However, Depa did not truly master Vaapad. Instead, it drew her too close to the dark side. She was more mastered by Vaapad as opposed to a master of it, although not to the same degree as Sora Bulk. The thing about Depa Billaba's use of Vaapad is that she never truly mastered it like her master Mace Windu did. Obi-Wan Kenobi, on the other hand, became a true master of Surisu by the end of the Clone Wars, being able to use it to great effect defensively and combining it with other lightsaber forms such as the Taru to use it aggressively. Plus, there's the fact that Surisu, as Kenobi used it, was very much geared towards fighting a aggressive Form 7 user like Depa Billaba. I give Obi-Wan Kenobi the edge in terms of lightsaber dueling. While Kenobi focused primarily on his lightsaber dueling skills, he had several force abilities that he used in combat and in practical use. He was proficient in the Jedi mind trick, but for the most part couldn't do more than influence the weak-willed. His skills in telekinesis were considerable, shown when he would use Force Push in combat against both General Grievous and Anakin Skywalker, the latter not being able to counter effectively. He could also use the Force to augment his physical abilities, enhancing both his strength and speed to increase his skills in combat. He showed the skill and the ability to communicate with animals, exerting influence over otherwise untamable beasts, such as the time he calmed a group of Gutkars on Ryloth. He also had skill in Tudominus, but not to the same degree as other practitioners. Finally, his most remarkable ability was his ability to transcend death and live on as a Force ghost. However, his ghost did not linger as long as others like Luke Skywalker did. While it is true that Obi-Wan chose to focus on his lightsaber skills, his Force abilities were considerable to the point that he could hold his own against other practiced Force users on his level, if not above. Despite her training as a Jedi Consular, Depa Billaba's Force abilities were considerably lacking. Beyond the standard Jedi Force abilities like telepathy and telekinesis, very little is actually known about what Depa Billaba was capable of, so it's really hard to gauge what she knows. Yeah, this probably won't come as a surprise to anyone, but Depa Billaba just lacks any real Force abilities that we know of. As such, since it's hard to gauge, there is only one judgment I can make. I give Obi-Wan Kenobi the edge in terms of Force abilities. Throughout his life, Obi-Wan Kenobi used a standard single-bladed lightsaber in combat. The lightsaber was outfitted with a single blue Adagan crystal and was constructed with combat in mind instead of comfort. Kenobi's third lightsaber was built with a more skeletal design and separated the emitter from the main body of the weapon. It was designed primarily for more combative use than his older lightsabers, and it was built to be easily disassembled. All in all, personal touches aside, Kenobi's lightsaber was a standard design of the era. Depa Billaba used a standard lightsaber with a single blade. Unlike most Jedi, her lightsaber was outfitted with a single yellow Adagan crystal. Basically, she had the standard lightsaber of her era, and there's little more that can be said about it. We seem to have once again reached the problem where both combatants have basically the same weapon. This is getting to be a fairly common problem that I am getting a little annoyed with. As such, I declare them both equals in terms of equipment. Well, there you are, everyone. The stats are in, so let's start by setting the scene. As a location, we will be going with the Jedi Temple on Coruscant during the Clone Wars, as it gives neither combatant any real advantage that the other does not have. As the battle starts, Obi-Wan is leaving a briefing when a figure approaches him from the shadow. He draws his lightsaber quickly, parrying a blow that would have otherwise killed him before it could strike. Depa Billaba is standing before him, having awoken from her coma and somehow gotten her hands on a lightsaber. She is now prepared to attack any Jedi that she comes across. The battle is fierce. Depa is more than capable of attacking aggressively, but every time she does so, she is met with a perfect parry from Kenobi. In a last desperate act, she tries to use a force push on him, but only to have it caught with 2 minutes and then thrown back at her even stronger than before, sending her flying into the wall and knocked unconscious.